more comfortable with. Shall we start? Thank you very much for joining us at this press conference that marks the beginning of the meeting of the World Economic Forum on Latin America that starts today and which will last until tomorrow. As you know, we're being invited by the government of Argentina, led by President Macri. With us, there are more than 1,000 people from 62 countries, including representatives from more than 10 Latin American governments and young global leaders that met earlier this week also here in the city of Buenos Aires. The community of the global shapers, that are the leaders from 20 to 30 years of age, are meeting in the city of Cordoba, coming from all Latin American countries, and they will have their own meetings in Cordoba city during the weekend. Our meeting falls within the topic promoting development and entrepreneurship in the fourth industrial revolution. And with us is a magnificent group of co-chairs. With us are Ashish Advani, President and Chief Executive Officer of Junior Achievement Worldwide, known as a young business person in many of our Latin American countries, with extraordinary presence and extraordinary job here in Buenos Aires. With us is also Alejandro Bulgeroni. He's the chairman of Bridas Energy Pan American Group. Thank you, Alejandro, for joining us. With us is also Hans-Paul Bergner, who's the chairman of Boston Consulting Group from Germany. Also with us is Eduardo Elstein, a dear friend, chairman of IRSA Argentina. We also thank Marcos Bulneroni, who is with us. He's also another one of the co-chairs. Thank you, Marcos, for your support. I will ask each co-chair to make a few remarks, helping us to provide a framework from their perspectives to this regional meeting. Ashish, you have the floor.
Very much. It's such a pleasure to be here. This is my second time visiting Argentina in the last few years. I work with an organization called Junior Achievement Worldwide, as you just heard. Junior Achievement has been in Argentina for 25 years, and we are located in about 120 countries teaching entrepreneurship. It's very relevant today to be in this field at this time in this country at this conference. We see global trends which are pushing us in the direction of recognizing that unemployment is no longer a theoretical issue, but a practical issue, and the future of work is now, not in the future. So when I think about why I come to this conference and what I think that I can contribute and Junior Achievement can contribute to the conversation, I think about young people developing skills which allow them to respond to the reality of the future of work, the reality of what it means to not have a job for life anymore, and what it means to develop skills that will allow them to be resilient when change happens around them, which is out of their control. And I think we're living with the consequences, not just here in Argentina right now, but really across the region, with what happens when young people, or as they age, older people decide that change is not something they welcome. So one of the skills that we now try to instill in young people is the skill of learnability, the ability and willingness to learn new things and to recognize that you will have many jobs and potentially even many careers over the course of your life. And that willingness to change with the times, I think, is one of the core skills that over time maybe hasn't been learned and now is such an important thing for the future of work. So that's the part of the dialogue where I hope that Junior Achievement can contribute. And I'm looking forward to hearing from my fellow co-chairs and to answering some of your questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Ashish. Alejandro?
Buenos días.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, World Economic Forum, for being in Argentina. It is an honor for us to have you here. And we believe it is very positive for what our government is doing to re-enter the community of nations. We've been out of the world for a long time, but since President Macri took office, he's been working, taking measures, very positive measures, so that Argentina can be a trustworthy country for investors worldwide. The only way in which a country can grow is with investments. Investments will create jobs and development. And our company has been investing in Argentina for more than 50 years. We've invested at difficult times, always thinking about the long term. That's why I'd like to attest before all our visitors from other countries that have no experience with Argentina, that Argentina is a good place to invest. We will face problems like all countries of the world do. This is not something unique to us. I think that all of us working in different countries in the world find many similarities. But even so, Argentina is a place where you can invest for the long term, always with reasonable profits and returns. This is what I'd like to convey to all visitors from abroad, those that don't know Argentina or those that do. Let me assure that Argentina is a very good place to invest in. Thank you. Thank you, Alejandro. Hans Paul, you have the floor.
Much. Good morning. It's a great pleasure to be here in Buenos Aires. BCG has established its first South American office in Buenos Aires more than 20 years ago, and we have been here in good times and in more difficult times. And I've also visited the country every year for many years. I think the key here in Argentina, but not only in Argentina, in Latin America and all over the world, is how to deal with change, how to grasp the opportunities and how to deal with the challenges. And we all talk about, of course, about globalization and trade and the opportunities and pressures that it creates. We talk about digitization and the opportunities and also the challenges that it creates for governments, for companies, and for every individual. And so one of the key issues that we will discuss here at the forum and share experience, the good ones and the not so good ones, but also I think, for the many years going forward, I think is how to make it work and how to make it work for the people here in Argentina, but also all over Latin America and all over the world. And I think as we advise countries, governments, and companies to make those changes, I think there are always four key elements: investing in people, investing in infrastructure, both physical and digital infrastructure, investing in financial markets, so in order to achieve financial inclusion and access to credit for individuals, but also small, mid-sized, and large companies. And fourthly, investing in institutions that can deliver the needs of the people and who ultimately ensure that there is a level playing field and the rule of law. And now these four levers have not changed over the decades, and they will not change going forward. But of course, the opportunities and the challenges will become greater. And especially also, I would say, finally, in closing, that in Latin America, we have seen, unfortunately, a very strong swing of the pendulum from more conservative to more socialist policies. The swings have been here more massive than in most other parts of the world. And therefore, ultimately, the progress that has been made in some years has been undone in the following years, and then moving forth and back. And ultimately, we've seen the region not growing as strongly as in Asia and some other places, which is a real pity, because the resources, especially, of course, the people are very special in Latin America, very entrepreneurial, very talented, very often highly educated, but the potential has not been fully developed, and development has been rather slow, and hopefully we can achieve more in the coming years and decades. Thank you.
Thank you, Hans Paul. It was a great message. Eduardo?
I am very, very honored and happy to see that we have the World Economic Forum comes to Argentina after so many years. We have in our himno, y los libres del pueblo del mundo nos responden, al gran pueblo.
And the free peoples of the world salute the great peoples of Argentina.
To receive at home. I find that the World Economic Forum has been going for the last 20 years to the whole continent, and that we receive them today, it's a real honor. I have the pleasure to participate 21 years, and at the end of the year 2015, one thing that I was impressed, it was only 5 young business people in the Argentinian teams and the Argentinian global leaders. And as I've been 20 years and I saw big crowds and small crowds, when I saw only youth, I perceived that as a time of change for Argentina. So one of the things I admire more of the World Economic Forum as a gathering is not just the fact that we have a political and economical gathering, is that always the future is being detected in every place of the world. And I congratulate for that, because when we were in a very bad mood, the young entrepreneurs of Argentina were being chosen to be there, even though locally they didn't have any support. I think we have a lot to offer to the world. We have food, mining, infrastructure, energy, real estate, a lot of things. And it's a very special time. I see that the entrepreneurs of the last decade jumped the Argentinian stock market and went directly to the American market. That's unique. It doesn't work in most of the countries. It was so, but this society built a youth that has the strength to overpass the problems. So I would say that we are facing a very changing world with it's more than a revolution. I think this revolution is harder than anyone we lived before. And the creation of jobs is not going to be created by the big corporations. I believe a lot in the entrepreneurship, business and social. And I think that if Argentina has developed in the last decades, is in that field. It's a very important time on the fields we are investing in Argentina. We have been working in real estate as a unique country without access to credit. So I want just to mention that we are starting this week a very, very strong movement in giving loans of mortgage with an adjustable currency. So that is a big challenge for us as a society. I would say that for us to build a strong currency, it's a challenge on the long term. But coming from a society with no credit, I think that the investment in infrastructure and long term, and that is the access to the first house, one of the fields we're involved, it's one of the things that is going to be motorizing a lot this economy. So my only message is I enjoyed these 2 decades in the World Economic. I know I've been insisting a lot, why don't you come to Argentina? I feel that Argentina will receive you in the best of the ways, and I'm sure that this combination of you detecting from outside our strength of the youth is going to be part of the next change. So I congratulate the forum to be here in Buenos Aires, and I hope that it's going to be a very successful meeting.
Thank you, Eduardo. Thank you very much, and we're very happy to be in Argentina. Voy a pedirles, por favor, que...
I will ask you to ask your questions and to say to whom you're asking the question. Let's try to be brief, and I'll ask you not to talk about that we don't focus on the questions that are outside the scope of this meeting. Can you please introduce yourself? Cecilia Caminos of the German DPA agency. I wanted to ask all of the co-chairs what are for them the main challenges in Latin America. Very briefly. Thank you. We will start with you, Eduardo. The Latin American challenges.
America Latina can improve a lot in the trade as never. I would think that America Latina has a tremendous benefit that it's an area with it's a peaceful region, and it's an area that the continue with the integration will improve the region by far. I believe that this next year, the fact that Argentina will be leading the G20 and maybe Canada leading the G7 is going to make a lot of responsibility in the two governments on the trade of the whole continent. And I believe that our first goal should be our biggest partner, which is Brazil. Because my belief is that, and I'm not talking more than challenge, I believe that when you grow good with your next neighbor, then you can grow the region. And I think that the region has a very good potential. It's one of the few regions in the world that can provide food for hundreds of millions of people. So I would believe that the trade in this region will improve, and I see a very good trend coming from the change we have here in Argentina.
Brilliant, thank you.
Well, I would say that I think the key is to overcome the volatility and to have steadier growth. And for that, following also what Eduardo said, I think it's important to open up more, to integrate more, especially in Latin America. I mean, Latin American trade is still only 20%, and to diversify more beyond commodities into industrial goods and services, and overall to have a more steadier policies in the various countries so that the pendulum is not always swinging forth and back and creating challenges for the people here in the region.
I would like to add to all of these premises that I share that the main Latin American challenge nowadays is that the peoples of the various countries may be able to work as a team. In most Latin American countries, there are many internal problems that make it difficult to make the countries easier to be governability. It is important for the countries to overcome that, and if things are better organized, Latin America will grow tremendously. But I see that as the main problem has always prevented us from growing. Thank you, Alejandro.
That point and build on it by saying one way you can build these teamwork skills is you focus on the education system. And there's been this historical underinvestment in education, not just here, by the way, in many other parts of the world. And we are suffering from the consequences of not focusing on the skills gap and on investing in education to not only build teamwork skills and other soft skills, but to think about how to mobilize, particularly for 14 to 18-year-olds, the right career choices that people make. When I think of what's happening in India and all the young people there getting coding in high school, and I compare that to what's happening in other parts of the world, I think there's so much potential. There's entrepreneurs waiting to be given the right skills to take advantage of their creativity, and that I think it's upon us to invest in education.
Thank you, Ashish. Completely coincide. I think those were 4 very brilliant answers.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much.
Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I am Pablo Wende from Infobae. Thank you for the opportunity. My question, I will make it in Spanish, if you don't mind.
Por favor, sí.
We are in an event that is carried out in Buenos Aires. Argentina is undergoing changes in its economic policy, and it happens today when there are so many foreign entrepreneurs in Buenos Aires. We find ourselves amidst a general strike and a sort of blocks. Those blocks are piquetes. Those are demonstrations that prevent normal transit of cars and buses. Do you think this is a hamper to foreign investments? Would that damage Argentina? Or this just happens normally by any country that is undergoing a change in policy? Eduardo, I don't know if you want to start. I believe that we live in democracy and that the right of protesting and striking is there, and we have to respect that. The impact is not greater because the WEF is very well organized, but I will say that some ministers changed their trip because they were fearing they would not be able to travel today. I think that for a country to grow, you have to work more, not less. So it is good for a country to have a striking right. But if you wonder what the change is, well, we have to work more to have a better country. Thank you, Eduardo. Another question? Yes, sir. Sir.
This is Nakatoyama. Came from Japan, Nikkei, and I would like to ask again about the regional integration. In this Friday, the Mercosur and Pacific Alliance will have a secretary meeting. So, how do you expect the regional the possibility of regional integration between Mercosur and Pacific Alliance? Thank you.
Who are you addressing the question to?
For all.
Well, clearly there is a lot to do in terms of economic integration, and as I said earlier, countries have to open up. There have been first discussions ongoing between the different countries, but a lot more has to happen. And as we know, trade agreements, investment agreements, and so forth will take a while. But I think it's really a huge opportunity for Latin American countries to really get together and to work more intensely together, and also to increase the connectivity through better infrastructure, both physical and digital infrastructure, to make sure that the exchange of goods, services, and ideas really is increased significantly. And maybe I think some of the discussions that we had in terms of trade protection towards the US and so forth, or coming from the US, will induce more cooperation and more openness and more integration in Latin America.
Thank you, Hans Paul. Por favor.
Morning, I'm Cecilia Ludwig. I'm a TV anchor for Líderes Show and the publisher of a business-oriented magazine, Mañana Profesional. I'm very honored and grateful for you to be here and to the World Economic Forum. I'll place the question in Spanish.
I would like to ask, considering the changes that we are seeing in Latin America towards more ethical behaviors, both by governments and corporations, what are the main challenges the region faces in order to prepare strategies that would be more ethical and sustainable? Who is the question for? Whoever wants to answer.
So, to give you some hope for the future. When we run our programs and we have students from all across the continent come and compete, they build businesses, they come up with a business idea and they compete. Most of the business ideas used to be very commercial. What we've seen is now about 70% of these young businesses that are created have a social entrepreneurship component to them. Not because we did anything, just because young people today are gravitating towards values-based businesses in a way that I've not seen in my lifetime, and it's happening organically. Now we've started to encourage it by giving awards for these things, but historically we never did that. And I think that, to me, gives me hope that your question, if you ask it in 5 to 10 years, will have a very different answer than if you ask it now.
Well, let me add, I think, it's not just social entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurs in all dimensions that, and their creating of businesses is really fundamental. And clearly, I think what we need is, on the one hand, strong behavior and ethical behavior, as you rightly emphasized, but we also need strong institutions in the various countries that really ensure that there is a level playing field, that the rule of law is being followed, and that any unethical behavior is being punished according to the laws that do exist and really are followed up. So I think we all have to make huge efforts and to ensure that really the ethics really will dominate in the coming years and decades. But it's a slow process as we really need to change the attitudes of people in all areas, so private business, government, civil society, and no longer to accept that you take shortcuts which ultimately really undermine the values in a country and in a society.
Thank you very much. We will have the opportunity for 2 last questions. I appreciate that you're short and that you can address it to a specific panelist. Thank you very much. Please.
Hello, my name is Maria Iglesia. I'm from El Cronista. I would like to ask, especially Bulgeroni and Elstein, regarding Argentina, that the Argentinian government, since they started in December 2015, they're looking forward to have more investment in Argentina. So how do you think the environment has to be created to have more investment that last year wasn't as good as the government thought at the beginning? And the second question is if you think that during this World Economic Forum in LATAM, you think that there are going to be announcements of some investments for Argentina?
Bueno, yo diría que
I would say that the government has started in the first day to make some changes in the legislation and the way we should be working. These changes have been extremely positive to generate investment possibilities. You first have to instill trust. And I believe the measures of the government last year have been extremely positive in this vein. I am impatient, just like many journalists who ask for investments every single day of the year and why they're not coming. You must understand that many investments needed in our country call for a very strict planning. And they call not only for a good atmosphere, that is a positive one, but also for measures to be taken by the government to change a number of policies that existed before and that were not efficient for investments. This change is taking place. We have had already a number of very positive measures. And to address something that I can talk to directly because it's our main investment, that is oil and gas, in the particular case of the non-conventional energy sources, all changes have been extremely positive, and right now we are starting to study how this should be developing. You must take into account that for this to be done properly, you need technology. Now, technology is brought by companies, and before they didn't want to bring their technology. Why? Because they had problems to import the technology. They had problems if they made money to take those profits back home. These things have changed, but the companies still have to bring the technology, and they're doing that. Many are already doing that, but it takes time. It's not an easy process. Fortunately for us, right now in the U.S., there is no large activity as there used to be before, so it is very possible for technology to come here faster. And once the technology has arrived, those of us who are operating in those fields are carrying out all the projects to put them into perspective. And this will take place this year. In 2017, we will see this happening and developments will begin. I'm also impatient, but I believe we have to take into account what we're talking about. We're investing for the upcoming 40 years, so things have to be very well studied beforehand. I would say that is the main situation as we stand today, and it's very positive. From the point of view of our sector, in closed periods, there was access neither to loans nor to equity. And I believe that the measures of the first semester that opened the country to both debt and equity for the corporate world is a very positive signal. When there is no trust, there is no funding. Now, from a standpoint of analysis, this year debt has grown tremendously, and for all of us who have been invested in for 50 years in the public companies, we see that it's good that the companies are moving towards equity. And I think that the best way to obtain a strong capital market is with liquidity, and for those who grow is where the capital movements are very flow very well. So as was very well defined by Jimmy Dimon, who is the chairman of a very big bank, he said, you've spent so many years as being paralyzed that now you can flow freely and you still have not reacted. Okay, they opened the door and you still haven't left. I believe that what is going on today is very positive, and I do believe that the fact that it is carried out by one company, then the second one will emulate, the third one emulate, and I think that all the big companies have started placing bonds, and I see that companies are now placing equity on the market. And to the extent this government is truly fighting to lower the inflation rate, this will also bring about a very big depth in capital market, especially in what is for real estate, the base of which is zero. Thank you, Eduardo. Last one, you have to be very brief because we have just 1 minute for the answer. Ignacio Librado of Ámbito Financiero. One of the problems that Argentina has because of the income in US dollars is a very low exchange rate. There are many criticisms from many sectors. How do you see this? Do you think this is a problem? And what would you suggest the government, if you could, in order to palliate that? The question is addressed to Eduardo and Alejandro. I think it's a free trade policy. And they have freed the exchange rate. While there is an income of capital, this will happen. I think we have the strongest impact due to the declaration of black funds. It's the most important one that happened in Argentina throughout history. 110 billion US dollars. And I think that the issue of having a free exchange rate is a state policy, and I don't have an opinion to give here. I think this is now free trade policy. Alejandro, I fully agree that the fact that there is free trade in the exchange world, it is very positive, and that what's going on is just part of what happens when there is a big inflow of US dollars. So the only thing that the market could possibly doing right now is to see some of the regional economies that are really impacted by this situation and to see how these problems may be solved. I don't see anything else that could be done because what is being done is fine. But you do have to find some alternative measures, not only vis-à-vis the industry, but also the jobs that are being created with the regional industry. Thank you, Alejandro. Thank all of you and the co-chairs for this press conference. I invite you to go to the plenary session with President Macri and with Professor Klaus Laub, President and Executive Director of the WEF. Thank you.
I have to run upstairs, but you will be escorted to the plenary.